It's midnight. You told yourself one episode. Your finger is already hovering over the remote. The screen is already counting down. 10 seconds until the next one starts, whether you decide anything or not. You know you should stop. You don't stop. But the real answer for why isn't about willpower at all. It's about a switch inside your brain that was never built for a world like this one. Think about the moment right before an episode ends. The music swells. A question gets asked. A door creaks open just as the credits roll. Your chest tightens a little. Somewhere underneath the story, a much older part of you just lit up, the same part that used to listen for footsteps in tall grass. That feeling has a name, and it's older than television by millions of years. Your brain runs on prediction. Every second of every day, some part of you is guessing what happens next. Will that rustling in the grass become a lion? Will that stranger's face turn friendly or hostile? For most of human history, getting that prediction right, or being surprised by it, mattered for staying alive. A neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz spent years studying this exact mechanism in the brains of monkeys. He found that dopamine, the chemical everyone associates with pleasure, doesn't actually spike most strongly when a reward arrives. It spikes hardest in the gap right before the reward, in the space of not knowing yet. The chemical isn't a reward signal. It's an anticipation signal. Uncertainty, it turns out, is more addictive to your brain than certainty ever was. Now hold that thought and go back further. 200,000 years ago, uncertainty was rare and expensive. A berry bush either had fruit or it didn't. A herd either passed through the valley or it didn't. Cliffhangers, in the wild, were mostly life or death, and they resolved fast. You didn't sit with unresolved tension for very long. Nature settled its own suspense. Your brain never got the memo that this changed. Every unresolved scene, every unanswered question hanging in the air of a story taps directly into that ancient anticipation circuit. It doesn't know the difference between, will the tribe find water, and will the show reveal who did it? To your nervous system, an open loop is an open loop. And open loops demand closure. This is where the story gets stranger, because for most of human history, nobody could manufacture that feeling on demand. Storytellers around fires could stretch a pause. A hunter describing a near miss with a predator would slow down right before the dangerous part, and everyone leaned in a little closer. That instinct wasn't performance. It was ancient. Oral traditions across cultures, from West African griots to Norse skalds, used the same trick independently, because the trick works on anyone with a human nervous system. But even then, nobody controlled exactly when the next part began. A storyteller could pause, but the fire eventually died down. A serialized novel from the 1800s, the kind Charles Dickens published chapter by chapter in magazines, ended installments on unresolved moments too, and readers reportedly lined up at docks waiting for the next chapter to arrive by ship. The suspense was real, but so was the gap. Weeks passed between chapters. That gap gave your brain time to settle, to file the tension away, to return to ordinary life before the next dose of uncertainty arrived. You closed the book. You walked away from the fire. The choice and the pause belong to you. That pause is the thing that's been engineered out of your life. A researcher named Natasha Dow spent nearly 2 decades studying the design of machines built to keep people playing far longer than they intended, machines built around the same principle Schultz found in monkeys. Uncertainty, timed perfectly, kept people in a trance-like state they described not as pleasure, but as simply not wanting to stop. She called it the zone. People in the zone weren't chasing a win anymore. They were chasing the suspension of decision-making itself. Streaming platforms didn't invent this. They inherited it, and then they removed the one thing that used to slow it down: the pause. Autoplay isn't a convenience feature. It's the deliberate removal of the moment where your prehistoric decision-making brain was supposed to step in and ask, do I actually want this? 15 seconds of countdown isn't neutral. It's timed almost exactly to outlast the length of hesitation most people need to change their mind. There's an older piece of science underneath all of this too. In the 1950s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran experiments with pigeons and levers. Some pigeons got a food pellet every time they pressed the lever. Others got a pellet only some of the time, on no predictable schedule. Guess which pigeons pressed the lever more and kept pressing it longer, even after the food stopped coming entirely? The ones who never knew when the reward was coming. Skinner called it a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and it is, to this day, considered one of the most powerful behavior-shaping patterns ever documented. Slot machines run on it. So does checking your phone. And so, whether you clocked it or not, does an episode that ends on an unanswered question instead of a resolved one. Here's a detail that makes this even stranger. Not every cliffhanger is created equal, and the shows that keep people watching the longest tend to vary their intensity. One episode ends on a small, almost forgettable question. The next ends on something devastating. The one after that resolves quickly, almost as a relief. That unpredictability isn't sloppy writing. It mirrors Skinner's pigeons almost exactly. A reward you can predict loses its pull fast. A reward that arrives on no fixed schedule barely loses its pull at all. There's a reason this feels different from other forms of enjoyment too. Eating a good meal satisfies you, and then the craving fades for hours. Finishing a satisfying book gives you closure, and closure, by definition, ends the loop. But an unresolved episode does the opposite. It doesn't satisfy the craving. It sharpens it, then hands you the exact tool needed to relieve it, sitting one tap away, time to arrive before the discomfort peaks. You're not really relaxing when you watch 6 episodes in a row. Your body's own stress chemistry researchers have measured shows something closer to mild, repeated arousal, quickly soothed, over and over, which is a pattern more associated with compulsion than with rest. Here's the part that should feel uncomfortable. You are not weak-willed for staying up until 2 a.m. finishing a season. You are a person whose 200,000-year-old prediction engine is being deliberately, professionally targeted by people who have read the same research you're hearing right now, and who get paid to apply it. Writers' rooms plan cliffhangers with the specific intention of maximizing what the industry calls continued watching. Editors trim the final seconds of an episode to remove any natural stopping point, sometimes cutting away mid-scene rather than letting a moment breathe. The countdown timer isn't an afterthought. It's a product decision, tested against thousands of viewers, tuned until the largest possible number of people fail to close the laptop. Streaming companies have openly discussed treating attention as their real competitor, not other shows, not other networks, but sleep itself, and anything else you might otherwise choose to do with an evening. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a stated business strategy, because a platform makes money on hours watched, and hours watched go up when the natural exit points in a night of television quietly disappear. None of this requires anyone to be a villain. Product teams are simply very good at their jobs, using real, well-documented psychology to hold your attention exactly as long as possible. The problem isn't that anyone lied to you. The problem is that a 200,000-year-old brain has no natural defense against a system this precisely tuned. Your ancestors evolved to crave resolution because resolution used to be rare, and finding it usually meant something good: food, safety, an answer. Now resolution is manufactured hundreds of times a night, in perfect, addictive fragments, by people whose job is to make sure you never quite get enough of it to stop. So what do you actually do with this? Not nothing, and not shame, because shame doesn't work on a system this old. Telling yourself you have no discipline misunderstands the problem entirely. You're not fighting a personality flaw. You're fighting an engineering team, armed with the same research you just heard, whose entire job is to outdesign your intentions. What actually works is putting the pause back where it used to be. Some people turn autoplay off entirely, restoring that 15-second gap where their slower, more deliberate brain gets a chance to catch up with their faster, more ancient one. Some people watch with the remote in hand instead of in reach, a tiny physical barrier that reintroduces friction into a system engineered to remove it. Some people decide, before the episode even starts, exactly how many they'll watch, because a decision made in a calm state is a decision your anticipation circuit can't argue with later, in the heat of a cliffhanger. It sounds almost too small to matter. But your brain doesn't need a big intervention. It needs the one thing it used to have by default: a gap, a beat, a breath, before the next thing begins. For nearly all of human history, that gap was built into the world itself. The fire went out. The book had to be closed to be carried anywhere. The next chapter hadn't been printed yet. You never had to manufacture the pause, because scarcity manufactured it for you. Now abundance has removed it, and abundance doesn't come with an instinct attached. Nothing in 200,000 years of human evolution prepared you for a machine built to answer every single question you have, the instant you have it, with another question waiting right behind it. Because that's really what a cliffhanger is asking of you. Not, do you want to know what happens next? Your ancient brain already answered that question before you finished reading this sentence. The real question, the one nobody built a button for, is whether you get to choose the moment you stop wondering or whether something else gets to choose it for you. It's midnight. Your finger is still hovering over the remote. But now you know exactly what's happening in the gap before you decide. The countdown isn't asking whether you want another episode. It never was. It's asking whether you still remember how to want something on your own terms.